and grounded in such a good way. It really is a totally beautiful day here in Boulder. And the Rockies flowers are just exquisitely bursting. They've endured incredible snowstorms. Little seedlings that were just hammered with a half a foot of snow are now becoming food that we're eating. It's a moment of plenty and beauty here in the Rockies. And that's so relevant to the topic that we're addressing today, which is really the soul. And when I look at all of you and I see who's on the screen, I'm so happy to see you, of course. You're like some of my favorite people on Earth planet. And I'm humbled because many of you are leaders. Some of you are out there already really creating sacred spaces where people can come in and be safe and remember the essence of their true beings and begin to come into intimate communion with that, and from that space move out into the world. And that's really what we've been up to in Golden Bridge for as long as I can remember, is really our deepest devotion is to the birthing of souls and the authentic expression of our soul nature out into the world in a way that has relevancy and impact and is congruent with this extraordinary spiritual energy that moves through us, but also this very unique force that is defined by our own biography and the destiny that's coming towards us. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the process again. And I know that we've gone over the developmental steps of this work many times and in many ways, and we're going to continue to do that. But before we do that, I want to just take a moment, if you're all willing, and let's just take a moment. We can even close our eyes. I'll put on a little bit of music. And we're going to catch our breath. We're going to catch the spirit and let it just come into these gorgeous bodies. And this is music for many of us that's dear and familiar. It's called egging. And let's take a moment and just let ourselves arrive. Taking a moment, you can close your eyes, put your hand on your head and just say, welcome, brain. Maybe make some faces, stretch your eyes, your jaw. We're going to do a little body part warm-up going from our head down to our heart. But for now, stretching our mouths and allowing our brain to soften. We spend so much time sharpening our minds, and in the landscape of the soul, the mind is a servant, an ally. Stretching the backs of our neck, we may want to put our hand on our neck and on our head. Say hello to our throats, the sacred center of speech. You can even make a little sound, and feel the vibration. What does our soul have to say in this life? And coming down for some speeches is the vehicle for the expression of the soul, letting the breath come into our breasts and our chest, our upper torso, filling our heart faces. Maybe it's tight in there today. So be it. Breathing into the space behind our heart, our shoulder blades, filling with the spirit. These hearts expanding and contracting, they teach us about what it is to be a human being, how to take those soul forces and channel them in a way that is healing and life-giving, that is loving. Shoulders, creating some space with our breath and our intention in those joints, a little bit under our arms to our elbows. What would it be to let breath fill from our heart right out through these arms, out to the palms of our hands, to our fingertips, letting the breath in. bathing ourselves in the spirit that we all share as it comes back from the tips of our fingers, the crown of our head, back to that center line, that spine, right down our torso. Maybe it's crunchy in there. Maybe we can breathe into the right side, but not so much the left. Let the spirit into those organs, all the way down to this place of extraordinary creation. And you've heard me say, and we know those organs of elimination, digestion. Softening our throats as we come down to this root. Our hips, sensual. Last session, we really focused on this awesome force of creativity and sexuality that when hooked up with our heart, really can lead us to potent places of intimacy, and down through our legs. Strong legs, shaky legs. What would it be to let the breath in, the spirit in? Maybe we need to shake them. Bending our knees. And taking a moment now to really find your feet. If you're sitting, wiggle those toes, push down into the floor. If you're standing, stretch those toes wide. And what would it be to let your weight, your head, your heart, your hips, your wings, be supported by our feet? Feet that have sides and tops, heels, arches, balls of our feet, toes. We're going to let our edges just soften here. Let our edges soften as we come back from our feet to our hips, to our spine, to the temperature inside our bodies, to our eye sockets, tailbone. To our breath. To take a moment as we do in this work, to hear the sounds, to notice not only what's happening right in our own inner sanctuary, maybe the heat, the tingling, pinching, to just really scan the twitching, the taut places, the juicy circulating places. And for some, we can't access that right away. We have to start from the outside coming in. So let's give that to ourselves. Let's take a moment and hear the sounds of what's happening. The motorcycles, for some maybe ambulances or cars, for others it's birds. What do you hear? What do you notice in terms of all of our senses, smell and sight? Take a moment and really locate not only where you're standing or sitting, what that feels like, the carpet or the cool floor on your feet, the chair on your back, but also what you notice around yourself. Locating ourselves here. It's happening, oscillating back and forth between the sensations in our body and the senses. You know, my favorite is always tea on the lips because I'm always drinking tea. So there's always tea on my lips. And to notice our breath and our sensations and what's happening around us. Smells. So that'll be our practice. That'll be our practice for our time together today, is to just keep checking in. Where am I? And what's happening inside? What is my response to each moment? And I really know that, as all of you do, or we wouldn't be here together, that this is a life practice. This is a way of existing. And the glorious thing about a path dedicated to embodiment and consciousness is that we keep expanding in intelligence, and our capacities to be attuned to ourselves, to other, to the rhythms and the nature around us just keeps growing to a place where we can be attuned to the collective, to our beloved students or friends all the way around the planet. All of a sudden someone shows up in a dream or we start thinking about them. Certainly, as you saw me go through the cancer journey, this path gives us such a foundation to be able to meet life on life's terms and to check in and get awakened through all the thresholds, which is really what we're talking about here. Yes, we're talking about youth and the very natural developmental threshold of adolescence, the journey from childhood through the waters, the ever-changing waters of adolescence into adulthood. But all of us are constantly navigating these passageways, and sometimes they're narrow, and sometimes they're normal. Like every time we close our eyes at night and go to sleep, we are surrendering, letting go, going into a state where our awaking consciousness is not navigating the ship, and something else is moving. And if we can stay conscious in that, we can gather and harness the medicine of these places where it looks like we're sleeping, but actually these soul forces are awakened and awakening. And so for some people, the night school is the place where the soul speaks the loudest. For others of us, it's the natural world. And I know some of you are like, you're medicine people, taking people into nature to bear witness to the reflection of how the wind and the waters, the animals and the bugs, and the subtlety of sensation in relationship with the natural world is a mirror, is a teacher for the true essence of an awakening soul. For others of us, it's the dance. Well, for all of us here, the dance. It's an incredible doorway, delivery system for working with the different levels of the human's being. And we'll talk about that, those levels. But it's also a place where the soul comes online and we get the heck out of the way. And all of a sudden we're like, getting these downloads again and again and again about our true nature, which is, I think, what we're all longing for. Helen Keller has this great quote that says, "Many persons have a wrong idea of what constitutes true happiness. It is not attained through self-gratification, but through fidelity to a worthy purpose." And we know that, like, we're just not happy with whatever unless we're really, our soul, our essence is on track. Maybe we're stalking our medicine. Maybe we're studying our delivery systems, or maybe we're deeply engaged in the interface of our soul with the world, be it through our work with people, with animals, with the political system, wherever we're called to serve. And the soul is also awakened through the reflection of the people around us. And that can be, we hear the same thing from people, from our family, different family members, and from a teacher, and from, our friends. And all of a sudden we go, maybe we need to pay attention to that. Maybe we're playing a little too small or a little too big, or kind of on the wrong channel, or doors don't open, or doors do open. And so we're constantly looking at the mirror of what is coming to us and what is also emerging through us. In this cycle of our work in Surfing the Creative, which is now moving much more into human development, not just adolescent development, but with adolescents, it's very specific. We go through a very intentional process. And those of you, and there aren't that many of you on this call that were around back in the day. I mean, I think, Lee, you might be one of the only ones. Lucia, of course. I'm trying to see who else was around. But we used to do these like 5-week programs. And, the first week was all about getting in the body. We spent 7 days. Like, of course, it's a life path, but we would study a rhythm a day, and we would work with these sensations. And really, something very powerful happens when you slow things down. And quite honestly, the biggest key if we walk away from this call today is that I want to share is that the soul does not move in linear time. The soul does not speak the language of my cell phone. It just doesn't. And it does not speak the constant stimulated lives that we are all living. And we have to be warriors, devotees of the soul, and find ways to carve out, and Siri, you're certainly doing this with the wilderness rites of passage, carve out spaciousness so that we can catch the whispers and the secrets and the medicine that we're all seeking to awaken through us and bring to the world. And I do think that we get more efficient with that process, quite honestly. I used to need a lot of time for that. Now I'm like, got to run around the lake. I got that time. And I go in this open space and boom, stuff comes right in. But that's a lifetime of practice. And so I want to encourage you all, first and foremost, as we are, I'm going to give you assignments today. I want you to really be looking at your lives and thinking about many of you have structured a life that allows you to have downtime, and downtime is not about checking out and watching TV, although there's a place for that. It's really about how can I take my waking slow in the morning, create rituals for going to sleep at night, sitting in warm water, taking walks, being quiet. And certain meditative practices actually take us out of soul spaces into kind of universal cosmic consciousness. That's a beautiful thing. And quite honestly, I'm concerned about the fixation on that in much of the new age. Being able to open into that place of unity allows us to remember that we are truly all of one breath in this world. But the truth is we are each having a very different experience of being human on this planet. And you just look on this screen right now, and it's pretty radical how different our life experiences are. And that's the landscape of the soul, where we are actually excavating, exploring, making peace with, contemplating, wrestling with what is, and we talked about this deeply in our last call, where do I come from? What's my ancestry? What's my biography? What are the challenges that have made me me? And we are not to turn away, but to lean into them, befriend them. They have everything to do with our medicine for the world. And of course, and this is this chapter's focus, what is coming towards me? What is being asked of me? What am I attracted to? What gives me joy? And not that kind of pleasure-seeking, Tinseltown high. I'm talking about that sacred satisfaction that we know that Agnes de Mille spoke about, that queer satisfaction. I think I have that quote in the book. So let's just talk really specifically for a moment about the developmental process, which many of you have heard. I write about it in the book. And I want to say anything I talk about is just some ideas. And for me, they are lived ideas, they're researched ideas, they're studied deeply for decades. But I want you all always to be questioning everything and to study your own biography, study the humans around you. And then what you know, you believe, then what you speak, you can get your weight behind. You can feel like this is something I trust, and it's a map that I want to organize with and help me organize what I do. So developmentally, that first sacred rhythm of flowing, there's this journey, and some say 5 years, some say 7 years. I think every soul is a little bit different, where the mother principle is teaching us about how to be in this body or not. And so many of us, it's a big or not, and it's very difficult for our children now. I mean, to create a climate where our children can actually come into a rhythm of rest and nourishment and digestion, and rest and nourishment and digestion, so that they can begin to find their organic way of being on this planet takes rigor. And this path is a warrior's path. And so all of the parents and teachers out there have to fight for this, for our children. And I know some of you are doing just that, even in the middle of New York City. And I believe it can be done, actually. We don't have, people sort of judge us and say, oh, she's so whatever, or they're so whatever, in the way that they live their lives. But that's okay. Eventually they all go, wow, you did such a cool job. So that's that first developmental piece. And then, and that's very much about being incarnated as a human being. And the focus is really on like the most ordinary. And from there we move into this developmental piece. We spoke about it in our course. It's in the book, it's in your life. We do it on the dance floor, the emotional layer, where the father principle, and when I say principle, just to reiterate, it has nothing to do with the gender or identity of who is playing that role in a human's life. Although very often there is a father figure, and sometimes he is able to really deliver the teachings around what it is to be a loving being on the planet. But often he was not initiated, or they were not initiated, and the teachings come in a very often very, very convoluted way. And we all know that, because that's the healing we've been doing together in the work. But this is the place, and this is very much, this is not soul and this is not spirit. This is like just the human right here, where we learn about our feelings, and we learn about how to be with them, how to work with them, and how to express them. And it has a lot to do with, ultimately, our capacity to be intimate with ourselves and one another. From there, we move into that third developmental stage, where really the mind comes online. And we're seeing now, thank goodness, in all the research, that when you move the body, there's social and emotional literacy. When you move the body, we think more clearly. And all this pathologizing of children, which still is going on in a very serious and inappropriate at times way, is forgetting the fact that we haven't given, I know, this is what I'm trying to say. I am aware that the systems are still quite addicted to the beliefs that children are psychologically dysregulated, rather than giving them first alternative ways or natural ways to regulate themselves, like movement, like movement, like movement. And there's a beautiful initiative called Dance First, and it's like dance first before medicating children. And so we have a lot of work to do around that. But simultaneously, the good news is the research is also out there that if young people do the really super natural thing of exercising their bodies in very extreme ways, their thinking capacities, their capacities to focus and do cognitive thinking expands. I'm going to show you this one book. Here. This book, Spark, is the quintessential book on that. And for those of you who will be here this summer and can't access it, I'm so happy to lend you this book. This is the awesome research on this book, on this subject. But there's lots of other stuff coming out now. So the other thing is, when the body, the heart, and the mind, the cognition, come into alignment, the system is set up impeccably for the soul forces to emerge. And that's what we're talking about in that 21-year-old birthing of the soul time. Rudolf Steiner talked about it. I've watched it 1,000 times. There is something that happens when somebody comes through that time in their lives. And there's a premonition of it at 18 2/3. I talked about that, I think, earlier in one of these calls. But something really happens. And I often say to people, what were you doing at 21? And it's interesting. That was my moment when I was in South India getting The Children of the World Are Calling and Movement is Your Universal Language and that whole thing. Of course, I did not know what any of it meant. And often we don't. But if things have gone well, and even if they haven't, there's a spark of intelligence that's coming, that begins to awaken developmentally. Now, I do believe the soul is always emerging. And when I look back on my own biography, as you all will do, we're going to do that in a minute, there were clues of who I am every step of the way. But from 21 forward, I feel the work is about creating spaces where we can be again and again and again exploring what is the nature of my soul? What is the essence of my being? How am I a different vibration of the divine than Sarita, than Ayla, than Ahmad, than the people around me? And what are the unique delivery systems that I need to cultivate and study so that I can give my gift to the world? And I know many of you on this call are far beyond that, but not all of you at all. And honestly, it's a constant learning. It's not like the way my soul expressed itself at 35 when sort of surfing the no, I don't know when it started to emerge right now. I can't do that math, but the way my soul emerges at different times is different throughout my life cycle and throughout all of our life cycles. So I'm going to take a pause here and a breath. And I'm going to ask each of you to take a minute, come back to that head, that throat, that heart, that spine, those feet, and ask yourself, what is one quality of your soul that you just know? You already know. It's already so you. Like people would say, that's one of her soul qualities, or one of their soul qualities, or one of his soul qualities. Just one. There's no right or wrong, okay? And what we're going to do is we're all going to unmute. Do you have it? We're going to start with you over here, Lee. Do you all see, do you line up the same way on your screen as you do on mine? Darn it. Okay, so this is how we'll do it then. We'll play a game. I want everybody who was in a Surfing the Creative, when it was a 5-week program, to speak first. Okay, no, this is how we'll do it. Is anybody here in their 40s? I think a few people are. Okay, oh my gosh, Ayla, I can't believe you're in your 40s. All right, so we'll start with anybody in their 50s besides me? Okay, so my word is midwife. Okay, folks in your 40s, let's hear one word, just one word.
Visionary.
Rhythm.
Adventure.
Beauty.
Pride.
Guardian.
Wait, what was that word?
Guardian.
Inspiration.
Okay, let's take a breath. Who said adventure, by the way? Was that Mandy? Oh, Trina, that's why I didn't know who it was. I don't know you that well. That's great. Hi, Trina. Okay, down to the 30s. People in their 30s. That's a bunch of you, so you'll have to really feel each other across technology. Go ahead. One word. Wait, pause. I want you all to be taking these in, because these are soul qualities. And just to feel, like, let your body soften and just take these qualities in. This is our community. All right, 30.
Present.
Caring.
Joy.
Be really specific to your nature.
A bridge.
Healing.
Guide.
Okay.
Bridge.
This isn't ever about right and wrong. This is about self-revelation and discovery, and it just gets more and more refined as we get older. Anybody else in their 30s want to speak? Okay, those of you in your 20s. Oh, you're so shy. We want to hear from you. The soul is shy, by the way. Totally.
Spontaneity. Explorer.
Space holder.
Community.
Who said community? Who said community? You don't have to say your name. It's fine. Go ahead. So let's mic up again so we don't hear all the ambient sounds of cooking and neighborhood stuff. Thank you. Thank you.
Mine is chill.
Say it again, Frank.
Chill.
Cheer.
Chill. Relax.
I don't buy that, Frank. Sorry.
Mine,
Cheer.
mine patience.
Say it again. Patience.
Patience.
Yes. I'm just playing with you, Frank, a little bit. Because I would put fire with you, not chill. Just saying. So that's one of those ones where you do have that kernel in you. That's a beautiful quality. You have that chill. And my sense is when you walk into a space, what you vibe is not chill, is something else. And that you will complement spaces by being able to help them come into their parasympathetic, their a certain kind of quiet and nourishment in terms of how they work with whatever's happening, that you will be able to help recalibrate spaces by your presence with that chill. So that may be part of it may be part of your essence, but in terms of how you are a medicine person catalyzing change, I'm not sure it's going to be the top 10 leading qualities of your soul. We'll see. We'll watch you over time. And you could ask your friends, because very often we see each other better than we see ourselves. And part of the nature of the soul is that some of us put it into the shadow in that we do not own our glory, our intelligence, our power, our possibility. We stay in a small version of ourselves. And then another way shadow can show up is, a distorted sense of ourselves in terms of grandiosity. So we'll spend more time with that over the next life. And in the meantime, let's keep questing, because that's what this is all about. And some of you who really know a lot about the nature of your soul have been on that journey of, well, what am I going to do with that? And what are the delivery systems? What are the tools I need in order to bring that soul force to the world in a way that is financially reasonable and ideally sustainable, that allows me to have joy, that allows me to juggle the many things in my life, and has efficacy in the world? And that's just a life work. But it is the life work. So that leads us to what we do in our work with the young people. And again, these are seeds that we're talking about here. We don't do all of this every summer at all. In fact, a lot of it we don't even do anymore. But the first thing that we would do with the young person after they came through the mother-father work and the inner mother-father work and the awakening of this wild, creative, magical self, rather than the reactive, but the creative. And then we journey through all this work around, who I am as a fertile being and an intimate and sexual being. We are moving into this conversation about community and how do I return and step into this community in a way that has meaning. And as you've read in Youth on Fire, which many of you have read, first thing we do is we go into the natural world. And, I'm humbled with the people on this call because I'm by no means the expert on this subject. However, we have spent, and I have spent, an exquisite amount of time studying how the different elements that are found in the natural world make me, how they are teachers about different facets of my being, and how they also can help work to harmonize and balance my being so that I can move forward ever more whole, ever more holistically in my approaches. I also think that we can study nature and have it be a mirror of communities. And there's there are many medicines that grow out of just the study of the elements, Chinese medicine in particular. So what I want to encourage all of you to do is start, if you haven't already, working with fire. Go into the natural world. What is the sun doing to the earth? How does sun work with water? What is the relationship between heat and air? How does that work inside my body? Where is the fire? Where is there not fire? Where's there so much fire that all I want to do is get with that person and I can't even think about my soul? I just want to, and what seasons of the year am I more attracted and more fiery than others? And going out into the world, it's not a thinking process. Again, all this is experiential education, is the way to do that. And in our work with the young people, we would do these rituals, and some of you were there for them, where we would literally spend an entire day devoting ourselves to water. And we would spend time in water out in the natural world. We would then bathe ourselves and prepare ourselves for a water ritual. Sometimes this would take half a day, the dressing and the costuming and the face painting and the calling in this spirit. And then we would go into ceremony together. And sometimes they were 4 or 5 hour ceremonies. And we wouldn't know what we were going to learn together, but we sure would learn together. And, sometimes there had been, as you've heard me speak to, a lot of death. So the teaching of water was about grief. Other times, it was really about how do we stay connected to water when the earth is drying, and how can our prayers bring in a sense of fluidity and keep that alive in the spaces between us, because we're getting brittle and we're getting edgy with each other, and there's too much fire and wood and too much parched earth. So there's many ways to do this, and what I want to encourage you all to do is, if at the very least, as part of your training and becoming an instrument, is to take each of these elements and take them through these rhythms and study what air is like in flowing. That's like an oxymoron, perhaps, but there is a way we can be in our flow that is so full of breath, and the whole focus is on the breath rather than on the earth nature of our flow or the fiery nature of our flow, and to really go there. And what is air and staccato? It's about telling the truth. Well, maybe it's about a bunch of things, but we don't know until we go there. And so to study these rhythms and study these elements through the rhythms is part of becoming a medicine person. Is you take yourself into the studio or into the bathroom or out on the earth or into your small little cubicle of a space and work with studying our nature, our nature. And the rhythms are a beautiful way, as you've heard me say, and we'll study more of that this summer, for seeing the palette of whatever it's we're studying. And again, the elements are like archetypes, and they can reflect to us qualities of our own nature. There's a mod on this call, and there's Renee, and there's others who are extraordinary astrologers. Each of us have our own, and then there's a bunch of different systems of astrology. So there's I purposely am not saying in the north is water or in the west is earth, because we each need to find our own maps for this. But we do have in our moment of coming onto the planet a certain constellation, a certain way the elements are aligned in our bodies. And it's a deep study. And whether we're studying feng shui or astrology or astronomy, it's all kind of helps us understand more about what the constellation, what that world was organized, how it was organized when we incarnated into this lifetime. And we can study all that. You know, I'm a lot of air. I don't know if that's a surprise to you, but it's not a surprise to me. But you know, and I have Scorpio rising, which Scorpio rising just loves to hang out in tricky threshold spaces and death, rebirth, and transformation, like birth, death, and transformation. Like that's my jam, but it may not be yours. So I want to encourage you all to do that. And with young people, if you're in an urban space, if you're in anywhere, it doesn't matter. We have a moral responsibility, and I feel that way at this point, to make sure that the people who are in our presence know what it looks like to put a seed in the ground and have life come out of that. I don't care if you have one little pot and you just are watering it every day and you're teaching these children and these young people about that possibility. Obviously, we're in abundance here in Colorado. There are places where people can't even get access to seeds, much less soil that isn't toxic. And when you see a plant grow, there is an understanding about what life is that is very different than if you have never had that experience. So I guess I feel pretty emotional about that. And the beautiful thing about technology is it does let us see like the extraordinary wildlife happening around this planet, but it's not the same as touching it and smelling it and lying on it and getting dirty from it and bathing in it and getting too hot, all of that. So let's get out there and get really elemental, and that will teach us about the nature of our own souls and the soul of this planet. Because as horrible as the news is and as scary as it all is, there is this abundantly brilliant, ever self-regenerating planet that we get to privilege to be a part of and to be in relationship with. And man, take advantage of every moment that you can, whether it's the city parks or I'm just in love with flowers, you know, like all you need is one flower in the house and something happens. So do that, okay? Thank you. Yeah, I'm really sad about that. Oh. Okay, I have no idea. I'm gonna have, that's my soul. That's something in my soul stirring in a new way that I'm surprised by. So I'm gonna have to study that. Like what came up here? I don't know. I'm also really upset about what we're doing to the earth, obviously, but the toxins and the extreme toxins and what it takes to transform them, my body being an example of that, is so profound. And, you know, I feel like we are talking about resilience. We are talking about protecting life in this work and with the young people. And I feel like I mean, Siri, your life is devoted to this, Mandy too, and others. You know, anytime you can get a young person turned on to that world out there that's natural, their own nature comes online, and it's like a vote for survival of the species. So we'll stay on that one. The next thing that we do in this wonderful process, and by the way, we don't, now it's more like we just embed the natural world wherever we can, because you know, on the body day, go lie on the earth. On the day of working with the emotions, you know, it always rains. It just does. Thank goodness. And on, you know, I mean, so there's ways to work with it. Then we also work with service. I'm going to bring the elders in a little later. So service. I really know that there's so many great programs out there for people who have extraordinary privilege to go and try out their muscles in different settings. And I think it should be a part of all education, that we have to get out of the classroom and into the community and feel what it feels like to know nothing, and feel what it feels like to be pretty effective knowing, never having that degree, but being able to just go and relate to people. And back in the day, I mean, we have such beautiful film of this work. Like there was Jeremy with working and figuring out his hip hop with really diverse populations. And that was sort of before everybody was doing all that kind of thing. And Jonathan and Dana Logan doing bowling with differently abled youth. And I mean, these were epic events. We used to do this, and I'm sharing these images for you because I think that some of you may be inspired to pick some of them up. There's a low-income housing project here in Boulder. There's many now. And we used to go and set up our entire like scene for an evening, and we'd have massages happening. We'd have like 5 or 6 workstations where people could go and make junk art and paint and do masks and do all kinds of art projects. We'd have big community dance in the middle of the room. We would basically set up camp and bring all the kids in, and the moms would get a freaking break. And it was epic. And we would eat together, and we'd get the city to fund it. And, you know, we did this for years and years. And so I just feel like community and getting out of our safe spaces and building bridges and crossing borders and going places. I am always involved in doing something like that. Next weekend, Sarita Tar and I will go and work with refugee women. I was just in New York City and started building this relationship with these people where I'm going to work with really underserved women with cancer, different than some of the other work I've done. I just feel like 5 minutes out of our lives to go and get into a space that's completely unfamiliar to us and learn about ourselves, and that is a great thing to do. And many of you are doing that. I'm preaching to the choir here, but for young people to do that is just a great thing. And I remember the day that it was brought up in the digestion of the service work of like, these are the special needs people. And in many ways, these people are so much more resilient, humble, gracious, ready and open than we are. And and it was like, wow, who's serving who here? And I feel that about every moment when I'm in relationship with you all. Like, we're learning, we are together, we are feeding each other. And so we have much to bring each other, and let's just keep mixing it up. And one of the best ways to get out of what ails us is to actually see somebody else ailing in a different way. And it just sparks like, oh, we're all here together, and this is my suffering, and I need to address this and befriend you as you address that. So the service work was it was actually part of us growing our community too. We used to go work with young people on the streets, and we would walk the streets. And I remember the folks from Israel were like, what is this country? You're the United States. You have this many people on the streets. You have this many youth on the streets. And then we would do these beautiful feasts. And again, a lot of art with these communities. it helped us grow community. So if you're trying to help your work go to the next level and build community with your people, go do something together. Go be responsible to something bigger than yourselves. And it's a fast way to come together and strengthen the fiber of the we. So let me do a time check. Are there any questions about those so far? Like, we've covered a lot in this first hour. Are there any questions? I'm going to look through my notes and just see. I'd love to hear any questions. Or maybe I should look over. I'd love to hear questions. Just unmute yourself and speak up, or comments.
I have a question.
Who is this?
It's Kiva.
Hi, Kiva.
Hi. So my question is around, I don't know what's already been talked about, but I think my struggle and challenge here in my community, I'm doing great things, I'm enjoying it. I'm just trying to learn how to collaborate, how to get funding, how to make the work a little more, like, go deeper into the work that I'm doing. I still feel like I'm kind of like on the surface, and I guess that's a reflection of going deeper into myself, but not being in Colorado and not having that energy or everywhere all the time, I'm just, just trying to figure out how to collaborate and somehow get more support in where I am.
Great, thank you. I think you're probably speaking for many people. And there are no simple answers to any of that. And, what worked for me in my generation is different than it was for my parents. And it's certainly different than it is for your generation. But I think there's some basic principles that we have to at least try to apply. And you said one of them, which is to keep going inside yourself. And clarity comes from that fearless, consistent, focused looking within. And I feel like that's been the biggest ticket for me, to be really honest, is I was such an introvert. I was in so much pain. I was alone raising children. I had to work. And I didn't have a social life. I did at all, actually. I do now, but I just stayed on it. And it just kept clarifying itself to me, what I was to do next and what I was to do next and what I was to do next. That's one thing. I do think that the work that we are collectively trying to do, which is going to become very, very apparent to you all by August, which is to build a collective foundation for those who have really gone through the training in this work, will help us get more precise in what each person is doing and have a shared platform that will allow funding to come in a different kind of way. That's an intention. It's not a guarantee, but I got that going on. But I get curious with you, Kiva, and this isn't the time, is what are you trying to do? And do you have internally both the knowing that this is yours to do, and then energetically and skillfully the means that you need to actualize that vision, and what are the next right steps? And then in terms of who are your people, that's a long process of finding the right people and building those relationships. And in our 20s and 30s, we're still often, many of us, in so much healing inside of ourselves that we are likely to attract teachers, not necessarily lifelong partners. And so to go into things with that humility and to contract in a good way so that you can do projects that have a good beginning, middle, and end rather than a chaotic process is a good thing. And this does lead to elders, because I do think we need mentors and guides. I do. I need people who are smarter than me in whatever it is I'm trying to do. And then I reach out towards them. And I know that that's another money and investment thing, but part of what we do in the Surfing the Creative, and we're going to talk about this, is see who in the elder community is attracted to what we're up to, who actually want to mentor us. And Kiva, you have put in your time, and you will continue to put in your time. You have the integrity and the depth and the commitment that people do need to pay attention. And there's a sickness that has us separated from the elders. And that is one of the things that I'm going to need everybody's help with, getting that moving into the next level. But I have elders contacting me now that are so cool. And part of what I'm curious about is how do we build not organic bridges, but overt bridges between those generations. So Kiva, I personally will take interest a little more deeply in what you're up to. And let's find a way to have that conversation. Okay? And this summer, we'll certainly be addressing that. What is a social entrepreneur, and how do we get our initiatives taking those next steps? I don't know if that answers, but it points towards. Where are you? I'm not seeing you. Is that helpful a little bit? Thank you. Okay. Anybody else right here? And P.S., so in the rites of passage process, this is what's supposed to be happening. It's just what you're speaking to, Kiva. We're no longer so fascinated with like, oh, my mommy did this and my daddy did this, or they were da-da-da-da-da. But we're fascinated with like, I got something I got to give to the world. How am I going to incorporate all of this awakening and actualize and come into the community as an adult? And what's missing, and David Blumenkrantz, one of the great leaders in the Rites of Passage work, speaks about that community. Right, Leah comes through David Blumenkrantz. No, you came through the divine, and David introduced you to us. Just saying. And your parents. And your own will, free will. Where was I going with that? That in a healthy community, you would come back out and everybody would say, who is this Kiva? What is Kiva carrying? And how can we make sure that that gets brought into the fabric of our community? And let's temper it and grow it and support that. And that's really missing. Ramon used to say, what are we initiating people into? And I think part of our work is recreating healthy communities. And those of you out there, it's not easy. And when I first started here in Boulder, to be very honest with you, nobody had heard of the 5 rhythms. There wasn't somatics on every corner. People thought I was crazy. They were writing articles about the work with the girls because it was so innovative. Now it's happening everywhere. So we have to just know what we know, lean into each other, keep dancing, because that does give us the spiritual forces and the will to keep going. And ultimately, it's between us and our own soul. And I know that there are blocks. I've had many blocks, and I know that finances is a huge block. And I'm here to help crack the code for those who are close in and staying in this lineage. I can't do it for the whole planet. It's just not what I can do. So it's not my job. I mean, who can? Although we have somebody in the government who thinks he can. But that's a whole other subject. Next question.
Melissa, this is Lee.
Hi, Lee.
Hi, I'd love to just speak to what Kiva was talking about,
yes, please.
If I could. Okay. I just wanted to share a little bit about my personal experience, and that is just naming. I'm 35, and I feel like I'm just starting to really step into my delivery systems and an interface that works for the current overarching culture at hand, that where they can see this surface area I'm presenting and understand it and give resources to sustain it. And I just wanted to speak to my experience the last 10 years. I've had a lot of angst and a lot of deep longing and desire to create, and I feel a bit like I've been spinning my wheels for a long time. And just wanted to say, like, sometimes it feels like this is the long path. Like, it takes a long time to really feel like you're starting to make headway in this work. And that's where I really connect with Melissa saying this is the path of the warrior. Like, oh, it takes time. And I think for you, it will probably be way quicker than it is for me, because you started when you were younger, and you have, I know I've danced with you for 1 or 2 summers. Like, you have this spark and this drive and this soul that will make it happen. And so may it be more swift and graceful than it was for me. But also know that, like, it's coming, and fruit does ripen on the tree. And like Bill Plotkin says, with the psycho-spiritual wheel of development, there does come a time where you are the artisan in the garden of life, and you are painting the picture that yearns to be birthed through you. And so that time will come. And I just want to say, I can understand that it's really frustrating when it doesn't come as fast, and you're ready and you want it now. And I know that taste on my tongue too. I heard that in your share.
Thank you so much for that. You're speaking directly. It's like, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
35 is such a sweet spot. They say it's the full moon of the one's life. And my experience is 35 was when I began to actually be seen for what I'm doing, even though I'd been at it for 7 years solid prior to that. And when I started to actually put my maps together, it was where actually it leads right into the birth work that we're going to talk about before we hang up here today. And then it was 35 to 42 that all the pieces started to come together. And 42 was the first real surfing the creative, when all the pieces were there and it was conscious to myself. So just to put that perspective in there, and what both of you carry is a fierce devotion to your becoming and your soul's expression, and a fire and a capacity to be extremely disciplined and hang out in the rugged places, and that's, I think, what it takes. And thank you, Lee. That was exquisite and so important. Thank you. Anything else anybody wants to speak right now? Who's here around 35? Goli, you're right there, aren't you, honey? Yep. Sarita, Christina. Kaylee. I see you there, Lucia, with that beautiful baby growing inside you. And I think it's worth speaking to family at this moment, just a moment, a pause on that. Yeah. Hi, sweetie. Yeah. And we all have so many stories around that. We want to have children. We're not having children. We do have children. We don't know how to hold our souls while we're having children. Kind of everything in between with that. And that's part of the soul's path, actually, is what is and what isn't. And I feel like I've been a frustrated artist my entire adult life until very, very recently. And I haven't fully pulled the stops out, but they're coming. And that was because I was raising children while I was doing my work, but I couldn't do my work without raising children. And I had so much inner healing to do, and the slowing down of things caused the soul to have to, everything around the soul to heal, so that the soul could really get clearer and clearer. So whatever your story is there, it's not by accident and it's not wrong. It just is something well worth being interested in, and very kind to ourselves. And I remember feeling like everybody's getting on with their lives, and here I am with babies, and I just it's a mess. And, you know, that was just a bunch of thought patterns, had nothing to do with reality. And again, it's all about just the long dance. We're for the long dance. And I'm going to come see you, Lucia. I'm going to be in New York a bunch. So I'm looking forward to spending time with you, sweetie. And none of us on this call who know you have any delusion about the extraordinary brilliance of creativity that moves through you. And to be taking care of diapers is a really tricky thing when you're as brilliantly creative as you are. And it's just a cycle in a life. Thank you for sharing your exquisite heart with us.
Thank you. That means a lot. I just sometimes I feel like I don't belong on this call, and just stuck in a phase. And hearing, I love hearing it all, but sometimes I just feel like I can't contribute because I'm not like in, I'm so much in the family and not in the world.
It's all the same work, honey. And like there you are with your incredible heart. Like, I don't know, all I could do is see you on that stage and that clown out talking about your husband, saying it so much. And you are alchemizing like what it is to be a parent with a big heart and stay on the path. You're going to come back out of this with so much to teach and say, and half these people on the phone on this call are going to be like not able to utter much, and you'll be able to support them. Like, I have no doubt about you, Lucia, and thank you for taking time to parent healthy, beautiful children. It's a gift to the world. It's a real gift to the world. And I'm looking around at other people on this call who've made enormous sacrifice being young parents and never knowing if they were going to find, their way, and they are, and we do, and we must. And so when's your baby due?
Beginning of August.
Okay.
Like it's taking forever.
Well, we're right here on the birth chat, and that's exactly. Oh yeah, thank you. Do you want to speak again, Lee? Lee, would you like to jump in here before I go? Why don't you speak some version of this into the room? I can't read the whole thing, but speak to that.
I just was saying, Lucia, it's so good to hear your voice. It's been like 10 years. And I just wanted to say that that's what the patriarchy wants us to feel. It's like the patriarchy wants us, we've been enculturated to feel that as mothers, our work is not valuable. And I know that. I'm a mother. I feel that so much too. It's like so hard sometimes to source value in the work of the family. And the work of the family is essential to holding together a healthy population. It is the sustaining force of life. And just as in, like when we go out on a rite of passage and we come back and there is no community to celebrate our return, I feel it similarly. It's like there's no cultural concept to celebrate and uphold the mother and the father and the sacred role of family. So it's like, I hear you, I feel you so much, but just wanted to like name it's revolutionary to be doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, Lee.
Woo, on fire today.
You're just full moon. You're a leader in the circle now. You're one of the pillars, and it's been a joy to bear witness to your becoming. Thank you. So this is what happened to me. I keep talking about me, but that's where this work grew out of. It grew out of real life. It wasn't like a bunch of concepts. I was a mom and I needed to make some sense out of motherhood. And I found that dancing helped me feel better and prepare for birth, and that getting women together who were pregnant and dancing with them helped them feel better, and that once the babies came, getting mothers together with their partners and moving helped those marriages be better. And so I devoted a good decade of my life to the dance of birth. And I can't believe I don't have a video. I mean, I made a full video out of it that Steve Cannon and I worked on together. We did a CD called Birth. And the last group of mothers and babies that I worked with are now 21 years old, literally. So, it was a huge chapter of my life. And you can find little pieces of the video online. And many years ago, they're gorgeous footage of pregnant women dancing. And Mira Keir was in there and others. Tara King, that's where I met Tara. With which one of the children, Vela. But at one point, 3 minutes of that video got online and went viral in like the, what do they call those people who get on there? Trolling. And 700 comments of trolls got on there. And they had the nastiest things to say imaginable. Like I shouldn't listen to such talk. About pregnant women, about women's bodies, about my languaging, the whole thing, wombing and breath and breathing into your bellies. They thought it was disgusting. And they just tried to destroy it. I decided I wasn't going to read all of it, obviously. I copied and pasted and took it offline. I don't know where I stuck it. I don't ever need to look at it again. But that's what we're talking about. It causes people to be very nervous. And the reason for that is because their mothers were not supported and empowered. And so their relationship with their own bodies and with the feminine is convoluted, and the only power they can find is by putting down this extraordinary force of life that we know as the feminine in whatever form it shows up, through beings of all kinds and all forms and identities. So there's a real sickness. It's a disease. It's what allows us to pour those toxins into the earth. And I had someone say to one of my children, "Oh, you're working for your mother?" Like, yeah, she's got like the coolest job in town. But it's like, oh, it's just, oh, you could only go to your mother. Actually, like that's what it's all about, is somehow being in right relationship with the mother in all aspects. So on that note, I'm going to talk with you about what we do at this point. And this is a very serious ritual. Those of you who've been through it understand this. I take this moment in the work as serious as I take anything I do ever in life. And this is where we do the birth ritual. And the reason that it's serious is I'm really committed to midwifing souls out into the world. And everything we've done leads up to this moment. So it's important that people actually have this experience and take all this energy that's been excavated and explored and move it into a sense of I am at this moment. It's also serious because when we mention the word birth, people may start to think, oh, we're doing some kind of rebirthing. And there's healing processes out there called rebirthing, and it's a lot about breath, and it's a different kind of process that happens. And Stanislav Grof talks about some of that work, the holotropic breath work. It's very interesting, but it has not much to do with what we're doing here, because that's about renegotiating one's birth in a very particular way that has a cathartic element. And now in the healing work, in the somatic work, we know that creating cathartic experiences often is a ticket out of the body and not the way to help people heal. And so some of the birth trauma work, which Christina's connected to, as I have been deeply schooled in, Annie Brooke is one of our great leaders in this community, is really about slowing things down and very carefully navigating through the landscape of how a soul in a baby body comes from the womb through the woman's birth canal into the world. And that's a very serious process. And we don't want to catalyze unresolved birth trauma when we do this birth work. Many of us have had to do very, very disciplined healing work around our own birth traumas. And I really encourage that for people. In fact, I encourage all of you to, if your mother is still alive, the person who gave birth to you, to ask her about what your birth was like. You have to do it in a thoughtful way because, one, you may not be able to digest what she shares. Two, she may not remember. My mother remembers one contraction between two children. Well, that tells me a lot about my birth, that there were a ton of drugs online. And so every time I would go through a certain kind of narrow passageway in my life, I would start to have these fog experiences. And I was starting to have, at a cellular level, be inundated with the anesthesia that my mother had experienced. I've cleared all that now, but that took a lot of work. I'm not going to get into the details of renegotiating birth work, but it is interesting to know what our stories are. And when I'm working with young people, and I used to be the one who met with everybody, and thank you, Sarita, for doing such an exquisite job. I would ask, tell me, what do you know about your birth? Because the second birthing often replicates the first birth. And we can get stuck along the way. So we go into this process, especially when we did it in a much bigger way than we do now, with a lot of awareness of what people's birth stories are. And our intention is to have so much ground in their body and so much health and freedom in their emotional landscape, so there's not a lot of stuff backed up, that as we come through this, it's really about the birthing of the soul and not about the wounds of the past. And everything we've done all week helps with that, or all summer helps with that. So here are the phases of the birth process that we take people through, and many, many of you have done this many times. And it's a ritual. It's a ceremony of like, okay, what is trying to be conceived through me at this time? And we do a dance of conception. My CD Ignite, darn it. Sarita, can you get one from the office and just show it on the screen at some point here? The CD Ignite, you could get birth too. The CD Ignite takes people right through this process, as does the birth CD. But we take people through the dance of conception. So what is our egg nature? You know, what is that energy that's holding part of the code of that which is longing to be conceived, gestated, and birthed through us? What is our sperm nature? Not like it can be what is my sperm nature, but what's the sperm nature of what's trying to happen here? And generally people are pretty dreamy and not super awake right here, but the work works anyway. And then what happens when that egg and sperm get together? And we literally dance egg, we literally dance sperm, and we dance union. And then it moves into what has now sparked, and what are we gestating within ourselves. We do a whole dance of wombing. So the conception is a 5-rhythm wave from egg, sperm to union to rejoice to, I don't know what the stillness song is in the conception wave. I just don't remember what we called it. And then we move into the wombing. I don't know. Yeah, can you open that, Sarita? Or what's the stillness song for the conception wave?
Would it be the last one?
Yeah.
World Soul.
No. The last one in the first long wave. Sorry.
Father?
No. Okay, yeah, it's probably not broken down there.
It's not, no.
Okay. If you open it, or I can look on. I'll do this in a minute. So then we go into wombing, which to me is super interesting. Here's what it sounds like. The stillness song. Take a breath here. And it's just this sense of something has landed, something mysterious is happening in my body. And we've spent this whole time through the dance, through everything else, trying to access and mobilize and free up that blueprint. That's our soul's code in this life. I think it's rejoice. Or actually, it's not. I don't know what it's called. So that's the stillness piece. And then we move into wombing, which is all about the heartbeat and just being with. And Kiva, you're in a certain wombing time that deserves to be nourished, deserves to be supported. You know, you're carrying something. You are carrying something for the world, and it hasn't fully birthed out into the world yet. And we never know what something is until it's born out into the world. And even then we don't know what it is. So you're more in that wombing time. So we move from conception into the wombing, which is a long dance actually. And then from that, we move into the birth process, and we go through another wave of the birthing. And that goes where there's a ripeness, and you're getting super ripe, Kiva. Sarita is like ripe at that 35. Lee, you know, it's just like, and then we move into focus, where in the birth process, we have to like give it everything we got. And it takes incredible discipline and incredible zero distractions. That's another thing. The people who get distracted easily don't bring their soul's mission to the planet like some of the rest of us do. We do have to kind of like be ruthless about our focus. Then there's that threshold of birth. And the thing about birth is that the mother and the child have to work together, ideally. That's the ideal scenario. So, and we never speak about that. We think it's all about the mother. It's an intimate dance. So the soul of our work, what's coming towards us, what's being asked of us, what the demands are. Lucia, what you're wrestling with right now has something actually to do with what you're bringing to the world. Absolutely. I don't know what that is, but that is rich and to be engaged with rather than medicated, which is what we do all over the place under every circumstance. And then we move into deliverance and home. And we're home. Like there's Lee, I'm home. And she literally is. She's found all the things that give us a sense of home. And then we move into welcoming. And that's a huge missing piece. How do we celebrate and welcome the initiate into their new lives? And I may have spoken to this, but we don't do it. And when I came back from that cancer journey, I did not know this, but that film that I made, Twisted Gift, was an incredible way for my incorporation to happen. One is I felt super complete, like I told my story. And I did it in a way that was my way, very creative, non-literal, but totally literal. And a lot of people saw it. And I got that reflection. And none of that was in the design, but it was just my body is so wired towards healthy rites of passage that I just knew I had to do that. And the whole way through, I was gathering pieces to make that film, a lot of the photos and stuff. So in our rites of passage work, how do we do this? How do we do this welcoming? You know, we have these things, we send out birth announcements, or we have debutante balls, or, you know, whatever it is. We get our Facebook page and our website going, and these are all real things. And we can't enough see each other, acknowledge each other, and bless each other. And within each of us, there is an elder. And Lee just did the most exquisite job of doing that with Kiva. She was a bigger sister, but she also just basically said, I see you, you got this, I bless you, I'm with you. And we can't wait for our elders to do that. We have to just be doing that heroically for one another. And that whole realm that we are all deconstructing and all a product of patriarchy, where we're competing. And if she's teaching about sexuality, then I don't get to. Well, that's not actually it. Lee's going to do about it one way, and Mariah's going to do about it another way, and so-and-so's, each person is going to bring it through in a different way. And we have to give that to each other, certainly in this healthy community, getting ever more healthy. And we definitely need our elders. They need us to carry their water and make them tea for real. Actually, it gets real all over the place. I just heard of a student of mine, longtime student, who's off doing her own thing and has been for years. Someone's dying in our community right by here, nobody I know that well. And she went and she painted the closet a black backdrop with stars on it, so that this being in her passing could be looking at, the cosmos. I mean, that is just the most beautiful act of devotion for an elder. It's just what it's all about. And so I want to just say, there's nothing special about going out of our way to care for one another, to welcome each other, to celebrate each other's victories. And I know you all are doing that for each other. And many of you are in little isolated pockets around the country. But let's strengthen our fabric. Let's reach out. Let's ask for. Let's lean in and care for each other and welcome each other across these thresholds, because it's very, very, very important. An email. Somebody crosses your brain you haven't talked about for a good minute or thought about. Send them that email. Period. We don't do it enough. We're so busy, and I feel like that's a really important part of going back to nature. It really is writing those letters and making those calls and sending those emails and texts and just loving each other well. And I say this almost every call. There's nothing fabulous or glittery about all this. This is just basic community. This is what's normal. And the piece around the birth work, I got early on that dancing through birth is a very smart thing. And that I would go teach these women, and then I would come home and I would write really good notes. I did this for a long time. So all of a sudden I started to see these patterns for how the energy was moving. And that's when I put this whole Dance of Birth thing together and made the CD. And then I realized this is a great way to teach adolescents about sexuality, because we're not just telling them about this egg. We're not watching just a video about it, which now you can do actually. And it's amazing. If you haven't seen, I don't know what it's called, but you can see the egg and the sperm and the dance. And it's so powerful and waking up our own egg nature. But we couldn't do that. But to dance it and contemplate it through the body is what this work's all about. And it's a very real thing. And when young people, giggle, get to dance sperm, they will never forget what the energy of sperm is. And that no matter what their gender is, how they identify, they have a sperm nature is so cool, because they're going to need that. And I was so surprised the first time I danced my sperm nature. I was like, wow, it's just so playful. And it's not that, it's this. And I love that part of my being. And I would never have known it otherwise had I not danced it. And I danced those rhythms forever. But when I went in through the sperm door versus the staccato door, or the father door, or the masculine door, or the sun door, or the fire door, whatever door, I got a part of my essence. And so that's what we're talking about is, we're stalking our essence through all these portals. And in this rites of passage process, that, just to reiterate this, all these pieces did not come together in this way until 42. And then it was 55 till I could write about it, other than in some kind of academic setting. It's just been this constant process of self-revelation about, what is I'm doing here. So you have time is all I'm trying to say. And none of us have time. That's the other side of it. But what we're going to do is we're going to respect sacred time and our souls, and the fact that they are shy and they emerge slowly and they need to move slowly. And we're going to end a little early today, so we have a little soul time. What do you think about that, each of us? Love that. So I want to close with a quote, and then we'll have a few questions. I just want to take a minute and just feel all the midwives, because one of the things that I did was I hung around with midwives. I just so wanted to feel who they were, because I knew that if I hadn't done what I'm doing with my life, I would have been a midwife. And then I learned later that the Melusine people are the midwives of the soul. So our teachers come in many forms. And what attracts you? I was attracted to them. Just want to honor those people who sit at the thresholds with others. And may the conversations that we have together give you the strength, give you the vision, give you the courage, really the courage to follow that subtle thread of your own soul and go sit at the edges and build those bridges and hang out with people who are coming and going. And to do so in an embodied way, in a confident way, in a humble way. And remember that Serbian quote that we are made of both stars and the earth. So one of Goethe's quotes is one I want to read right now. Until one is committed, there is hesitance, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidences and meetings and material assistance, which no man or human could have dreamt would have come their way. I have learned great respect for this couplet. Whatever you can do or dream, you can. Begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. So here's to the bold beings of Golden Bridge. It's my honor and joy to be with you. I'd like to take a moment and just really connect with our head and our heart, our wombs, our hips, all the way down to our feet, and to see if there are any comments or burning questions, warm questions, uncomfortable but important questions that want to be shared, or comments. Take a few minutes and open up the space. You're welcome to unmic and go for it. And I see one question written here, which I'll look at. How she discerns the soul call versus mass field call. What is my... So I see a question here around soul, individual, and collective. Is that what I'm sensing the question? Do you want to say it, Leah?
It's
Hi, Nan. Thank you.
So I think, what I'm coming to, Kiva, thank you for opening that question, because, this is what's been in my heart a lot. I'm almost 42 in another month, not even. And my girl is 16. I've been a single mom, and I feel that, like, what is my thing? And I have so much to give, so much inside of me. And I think one of the gifts, one of being sensitive and one of being a mother, is you see everything. You see the need here, you see the need here, you see the need here. And for me, I'm really sitting with what is my particular channel, and where does it sprout from there, rather than this channel and this channel and this channel, and really refining my particular soul's destiny. What's my piece to work with? What's my piece to bring forward? And I know it's a big question for a small amount of time, but it seems to be weaving in with where we're at in general.
It's the question, Ayla. So thank you for saying it again.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, I could spend my entire life responding to the emails that come in that are about the horrific things that are happening, and some really call me more than others. And I feel our job every day is to wrestle with, am I being an ally to the things that are mine to attend to in this life? And every day we have to answer to ourselves. And I mean, very recently, I just came back to, I got to actually get serious with the people who are very committed to this work and make sure that every single one who are truly showing up for the work get their feet on the ground and their missions manifesting out into the world, and that's enough for this lifetime. And it's not enough, but it has to be enough. And we are not to go down with the ship. I got that. Like, and we can go to the edges. We can, but we are not to be sacrificed for the sicknesses of these times. And obviously we will be challenged on that. And so I'm happy to get in the room with you some more. I think that's going to happen this summer for us, Ayla. But you know, now you have so much health, and so much of the work with raising your child was about that, and also your own healing, that you just keep asking that question. And you already know some things about your natural tools of delivery. And one of the problems with the New Age or Boulder, Colorado, is we think that the space is saturated. Well, I have to remind myself constantly that most people are hungry, or many people are hungry for what we do. And I just have to look 5 minutes outside my little niche. You have so much to bring women, I think, Ayla, and you have such a relationship. You know, I haven't caught up with you in a good minute, but you already know. And it's just about going into spaces. That's why we keep walking into the empty spaces in the practice where there aren't other people doing it, and not comparing yourself to other people and getting to it, because you have much to bring women. I know that, and maybe more. So, you know, there's something about, like, when I was raising children, I taught 1 hour, 1 dance a week. And the rest I was doing after I was somebody's research assistant, and I just went to work and raised my children. And just little drops of what's truly our soul, and then the rest will come. And you do need to feed yourself and your children.
I just want to, sorry.
Go ahead, Kiva.
I really like what you said about going into spaces versus creating them, because I feel like I've kind of jumped to creating, and maybe I need to be inserting myself into spaces more that, like you said, don't know anything about this kind of work in the community.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's the service piece. I went into every single space I could possibly go. Homeless shelters, prisons, I mean, wherever. Just, it was partially how I learned. I mean, it was totally how I learned. I also wanted to, I had a mission, like, bring the body, you know, I was driven. And I think Kiva and Ayla, both of you, you know, back to, oh, I was going to give you all assignments, back to what is stirring the loudest? What's the one that just keeps showing up again and again and again, bottom line, you know? And it does change a little bit over a life, but right now, what's the big one? And then to move from that space. Okay, that's an assignment. And so my assignments are the following. I really want to encourage you all to get out and start wrestling with the elements and being with them and letting them wake up in your consciousness, and start studying what is it to come into rhythm. Like, it's amazing when we come into rhythm and we start cycling with the moon, and we start, you know, feeling the rain coming. And in the summer, we're much more expansive, and in the winter, we're much more internal. And we start to have certain rhythms with our friends, to just play with that. And the way in is through the dance, through the natural world, and these elements. It's just powerful. Please apprentice to the elements. The other thing I really want you to do is, like, I mean, my whole universe is like a soul painting. I'll just show you this. Like, how many of you have been to my office? It's insane. I could walk you downstairs. Just everything is like, I just surround myself with images because the soul speaks the language of images. Images, images, everywhere I go. Beautiful little things. Just, make art. And art can be how you dress. It can be all that stuff. We talked about that. But surround yourself or make vision boards. Keep working with that. What is attracting you? I made I don't have it here. I made a shield a few years ago. I didn't know what it all meant. Half of it was gold. Half of it was all faces of all these women. It is now 6 years later, it's all making sense to me. I totally get what I was trying to do there. So we have to really tend this landscape. And I don't have time to do my own art, but I have to have time to do my own art on occasion. Everything's my own art. And then the other assignment I'd like to close with is called the retrospection. But before we do that, I want to see if there are any questions, any more questions or comments, because I want to open it a little bit wider. Please.
Hey, it's Mandy. I have a question about the second birth. I guess wondering, like, from your perspective, is that like almost like a biological, natural process that really happens at a certain age, like between 35 and 42, or does it hit people at different phases, like different kind of? I'm just kind of curious about your thoughts on that.
Well, that's a beautiful question, and I really see that second birth happening around 21, and then there's like the whole rearing of the child that we call the soul that starts to come into manifestation, these big moments at 35 and 42 and all the stuff in between. Just to reiterate that 0, 21, 42 is very powerful to study. There's this whole thing of ages and stages is a big contemplation, because there's arrested development. And we can be 21 years old acting like 8. And parts of us are acting like 8. All of us often, we get stuck along the way with certain parts of ourselves. So age can be an indicator, but then there's stages. And we can miss stages. I've seen it. I've seen it. So a lot of the work that we do, and which is partially why I think Surfing the Creative is now more an intergenerational phenomenon, is we have to go back and rework that stuff. It doesn't mean it's a life sentence, but we really may have been too much involved in drugs in our late teens to have any ground, any emotional literacy, much less any soul coming online. We're just checked out every possible way. And I think some of the medication does that too. It can support in some cases, but it also can completely distract. So, that's where Bill Plotkin's work is so also beautiful, and how it interfaces with that, because he's really about stages. And stages are just these developmental cycles that are very important to come into consciousness around and nourish, so that we can move into the next and the next and the next. So I hope that answers it a little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else right now? So I want to speak about the soul of work. And that's kind of what we've been talking about, our own individual souls, but the collective soul. When I sit here and look at these sweet faces, it's like it is a dream manifesting, and many of you know that when I was a little girl, I was like, my grandmother brought me dolls from all over the planet. And I had my first ecstatic experience seeing It's a Small World and all these puppets dancing. And I would I was so alone that I would spend weekends alone in my bedroom with all these paper dolls from all over the planet and these other dolls. And I'm going to write about that. But it was like, something in my soul was in love with these cultures and these peoples and these gestures and this whole thing. And, it took me quite a while to see how one thing led to the next, And, to see all of you here is, just the iteration of a soul call. And now there's this world soul that has my attention, that's ours to hold together. And so at times when we're feeling very alone and isolated, to remember that there's a we here. This is actually a mandate. This isn't even about whether we feel like doing it or not. Had Lee not done her work, she wouldn't have been able to step in as the pillar that she is at this time. And believe me, when Lee came in, it wasn't a tea party. It wasn't a walk in the park. And I'm looking at many of you, like, we all need each other. We all are doing something that we have no idea what the ripples on the planet will be. But this image of all of us, gathered and gathering and doing this work and serving in these embodied ways and calling forth the soul of whatever it is we're addressing. I don't even know what I'm saying, except that there's the individual soul and there's our collective soul, and we are as supported by the collective soul and indebted to it and in devotion to it. And I am here because of you all. And apparently we're on this call because of me. And it's a symbiotic and serious matter. And so let's keep dreaming and let's keep getting to it, and let's lean in and show up every day and continue to grow up and not give up. And I'd like to close with a very simple meditation that Rudolf Steiner indicated called the retrospection. And it's a very powerful practice that helps us stay ever more awake in our sleep so that we can come into more conscious dreaming. And I do this activity at the end of a year. I do it at when my birthday comes. I do this activity to clear the year that has just passed. I use it in a variety of ways, as I hope you will do with everything that we share. I'm not dogmatic about how stuff gets utilized. I just want you all to be explorers. So with this, the same. And this activity is one you can do at night before you go to sleep. I am not religious about it. I pretty much don't do it all the time, but I sure did for a while. I was very, very practiced in this. And basically, if you're too tired, you can just walk backwards to your bed and sit on the edge of your bed and do a second of it. If you've got the energy to do it in a fuller way, you can. And our work is to see ourselves sitting on the edge of the bed and then to wind the day back as if we're seeing a movie playing backwards. So tonight when I go to bed, I might say, okay, I saw myself in the bathtub. There I am in the bathtub. That was a real time of great relief. And to notice the qualities of that time. And there I was having dinner with my grandchildren and it was so sweet. And we were talking about how we grew the lettuce this year. And then there I was driving across town, racing to to get home to the grandchildren to make dinner. And I was a little unsettled in myself because whatever. And there I am, I'm just zipping through. And there I am on the call talking about the retrospection, watching my hands and checking in, how was this call? And I was feeling a lot of excitement and peace. And there I was getting ready, and going all the way back through the day to there I was alone in my bed. Mark had gone to pick up the grandchildren, and I was waking up slowly, which is a very rare thing for me, P.S. And it felt so delicious to have that moment of solitude. And then I crawl into bed, and that day has had some digestion. And I can open to the night school, as Claudia McLaren speaks to, when the stars and my soul and my unconscious and the collective can work with me. And I'm not just busy all night trying to digest my day. And sometimes we're woken in the night with very important guidance. Sometimes we wake in the morning and we get very clear things that we need to pay attention to. If we are not disciplined about that, we will miss the breadcrumbs that lead us home. And I have like little scraps of paper everywhere, piles of them that I try to synthesize and deal with along the way. So whatever your style is, you all have phones, that's cool. Take notes. And when the doors open and the muse speaks to you, know that it's a gift and it may not happen more than once. So get it, pay attention to it, because your soul is wanted, and your soul wants you, and the world wants your soul. So I love you. See you soon. I sure hope. Mwah. Peace. Go forth. Shine. Let's be, we are the golden stars in the night sky of these times. Okay? Have faith. Oh, actually, one more practical thing. You'll get an email from us, and we will do a group call in August. If you're not here this summer, it's all cool. You'll catch up, or you'll show up, and we'll keep going. All right? And Maren, if you have missed some of the earlier ones, they're all different, and they do build on each other, and I encourage you to listen to them if you have the time and the inclination. And if not, bless you. Thank you. Mwah.